Summer is often a great time to relax and take a break from the stresses of the academic year. But as the college application season rolls around the summer before senior year, our last year of high school, it's important that we prepare ourselves. Hi, I'm Michael, I'm a student at Brown University, and today I'm going to go through the 5 steps Ivy League admits take the summer before senior year to prepare for college application season. Be sure to stick around for the full video to get some great words of advice at the end. If you have any questions about the college application cycle or my personal experience, you can feel free to message me on Minnect. The first application step that Ivy League admits take the summer before their senior year is to make their college list. And when making the college list, the biggest question that we should be asking ourselves is, what is our biggest priority? For example, who is paying for college? If your parents are going to pay, which is a great privilege, then of course that's going to be different from if you are going to pay for your own education. Different circumstances mean different situations. For example, some people might prefer living close to home, while others would prefer to see a different side of the US. Different preferences for colleges will result in different college lists, so it's not important to apply to the colleges that your friends are applying to, for example. When I was making my list, I had a few factors listed, but one of them was cost, one of them was location. Another one, specifically because I was applying as a pre-med student, was their medical school and just their medical program and opportunities in general. I applied to 18 schools, which may sound like a lot, but I was applying to a lot of reach schools. So these schools had very low acceptance rates, and to make sure that I didn't miss out on any opportunities to go to one of these top schools, I did apply to as many as I thought made sense to me. But again, I did cut some Ivy League schools or some top 20 schools, so if you're interested in why, you can listen to my reasoning in my video linked above. Besides that, I also applied to schools with potentials for academic scholarships. Ivy League universities don't do academic scholarships, they only do it based on financial aid, and a lot of the schools in my local area, especially private universities, offered very generous merit scholarships depending on the academic stats of the students applying and getting into those universities. And my final piece of advice regarding these college lists is to make a spreadsheet. So we should list down all of the factors that we want to consider on that spreadsheet and use it to compare each of our choices. Again, with these lists, it can be important to discuss with your guidance counselor or your parents what schools would make the most sense for you to go to, especially if your parents are financing your education and have some say in where you would end up going in the first place. The second summer application step that Ivy League admits do is to ask for letters of recommendation, if you haven't already. Now, the first step to this is to make a professional email. So if we have some email that says michaellovesdogs@gmail.com, it's important to make a more professional email with your full name or the initials of your first name followed by your last name, something professional with no numbers, no characters if possible, although characters separating your first and last name could be used. Something that looks professional, and using some sort of trusted email source, specifically Gmail is a great source, would make a professional email that is able to be used for college applications. In addition to that, it's important to have that personal email used when we're applying through the Common App. So although I had a school email for my high school, at the end of my time at the high school, they basically removed that email and gave us a warning to move all of our documents. So if I want to keep those emails from the Common App or from colleges, it's important to use my personal email in the Common Application, and it's important to make it sound professional. Moreover, if we have that personal email, it's important to not put any weird profile pictures or something that would stand out in a negative way. So I would honestly just not put a profile picture just so it's neutral and there's nothing that can be gleaned from that application email photo. But besides making a professional email, it is also important to email professors. So if we haven't already emailed professors about letters of recommendation, it's important to do so ASAP. I would email them basically right after watching this video. What I did is I emailed my professors in April of my junior year, or my second to last year of high school. And I did this over email because I didn't have the opportunity to talk to them in person. So I found that to be the best way to reach out, and I obviously made a very good template as to professionally and politely ask them for this letter of recommendation. Now, although April of our junior year may sound very early to ask for letters of recommendation, it's important to secure letters from our preferred professors or teachers if we're applying to these very selective schools, because good and varied letters of recommendation can make an application stand out in a positive way. Now, the one thing I will say about this is that I had one teacher who I asked to write me a letter of recommendation, but they only wrote 10 letters of recommendation because they put a lot of time and effort into writing good ones for the students that asked earlier. And this is the reason that I will recommend now, ask around and listen around to see if any professors only write a limited number of letters of recommendation. Now, many professors or teachers will make exceptions for students that they really like or have a great relationship with, but many teachers are also very fair and equitable in terms of the letters of recommendation and will write letters simply for the students that are good in their class and ask them earliest. So these students that knew about it from their older siblings in my high school asked this teacher in January of their junior year or December or something around that time to write them their letters of recommendation. So my honest advice looking back, if you don't know about this or you don't have an older sibling, which I didn't in the high school to tell you which teachers have limits to their letters of recommendation, I would just start forming a good relationship with these professors in the fall and early winter of my junior year. And then what we should do is ask these teachers in person December before winter break to write us these letters of recommendation. Because I don't see it as a bad thing to ask early as long as the relationship with the professor is developed to a good extent. Once you have that yes, you can then follow up in the later months to give them information pertaining to writing the letter of recommendation. But just securing that right before the middle of junior year is a great place to be. And what I'm saying now is that if you haven't had this done yet, it's no big deal, but what I recommend is asking professors by emailing them ASAP. The third application step that Ivy League admits take is to visit college campuses. Now, when I say visit college campuses, I don't mean to fly around the world looking at every single school that you want to apply to and then considering adding them or taking them off your list. What I am saying is that if we are near certain colleges that we want to apply to, it would be important to tour these campuses to see if we can see ourselves being on that campus, living on that campus, studying on that campus. For example, some colleges are gated and have specific land dedicated to only students, while others have an open campus and will allow different people to walk through the campus, which is a different vibe, obviously. So it's important to get a sense of the community around that college. For example, if a college is in the middle of New York City, it's going to be a much different vibe from a college that's more suburban. What I did, which was a little rushed, but I don't really have any regrets about it, was visit the two colleges that I was heavily deciding between once I got accepted into them in a day on a Saturday. So I literally just drove to that first college campus, had a tour, or didn't even have a tour, I just walked around. And then I drove to the second college campus. And since I knew I was heavily deciding between the vibe of these two schools, I was looking at the environment, I was looking at the general cleanliness of the college campus, and that really helped me decide where I wanted to go. What I would do in hindsight, if I had time during the summer, was to just visit the local colleges that I was applying to. So if I live on the West Coast and I'm applying to a school on the East Coast, it's not going to make much sense, in my opinion, to fly all the way to the East Coast to tour all of these schools before you know whether or not you got into these schools. If you happen to be flying to the East Coast and you're a day trip away from these schools and you have the time to do so, I would heavily recommend to just stop by and see the vibe of the campus. For example, if you're in Boston, there's a ton of schools in Boston to look at. But on the other hand, when I was visiting college campuses for random tours or trips that my family did, I was in middle school, for example, and I was in Boston, I wasn't really paying attention to the vibe of Harvard, for example, and seeing if I would be living there as a student or if I could see myself being there as a student. So obviously, I wouldn't go out of my way to go to college campuses before high school, but if we are in high school, if we're thinking about the applications, it's important to visit college campuses with the idea in mind of if we could go there and see ourselves going there. So if we're only a few hours away from these campuses, I would make a day trip out of it. I would do it with friends even, just to see the vibe of the campus. And then depending on which colleges we're admitted to, I would then look at my top choices and definitely fly or drive to those campuses before seeing if I want to commit to those schools. The fourth application step that Ivy League admits take is to complete the common application. Now, I know the summer may seem like a very early time to complete the Common App because I believe it opens August 1st of every year, but the application questions are available online and the Common App essay is very, very loose in terms of what we can write about. I would start drafting the Common Application essay and I would specifically look to hire some sort of college counselor or a person who can help edit the essay. Editing is different from writing. I do not believe in hiring anybody to write an essay for us, because in general, if we do that, the essay is not going to sound like it's our voice, and it's also just not going to come across the same way, and people can tell when it's not written by the student. Now, with these college counselors or these editors, I would recommend strongly looking into their background and their history with students and their reviews online before we commit to paying up to thousands of dollars for these different people. In general, it's important to make sure that they have personalized advice and they care about the students and where they get into. I don't believe that bigger companies are necessarily the best option in this case, because with tons of students to look out for, they may not necessarily care as much about where you get into and your application process. In general, having other people read our essay, especially our Common App essay, can provide a different perspective on what we're writing. But then again, it's important to not have too many people read our essay, because then it's just going to sound more and more generic. So obviously don't go for 10 different people reading this essay, but having a few people read our essay, like our parents or our guidance counselor, can definitely make a good impact on improving the essay. The fifth summer application step that Ivy League admits take is to research and apply for scholarships. Now, there are a ton of scholarships that we can apply to, whether they be local scholarships, which have the advantage of having a lower competition pool or applicant pool, institutional scholarships, which are usually offered by universities after a student is accepted or after we are accepted to a university, employer scholarships, so different companies like Taco Bell can sponsor scholarships for students, athletic scholarships, which are often used by athletes to go to a school that usually has very high costs, and there's also non-traditional scholarships. So for example, there are music scholarships where we can apply with a video of us playing some instrument or something more creative. So with all of these scholarship opportunities, it's important to take the time over the summer to look into some random local scholarships or some different scholarships that could be applied for. A lot of the times when there's a higher barrier to entry, for example, a bigger essay to write for these scholarships, then there could be some opportunities to apply to these scholarships with a much lower applicant pool. If an application just requires us to click a button like a sweepstakes usually does, then obviously the applicant pool is going to be much higher and the chances of getting that scholarship will be much lower. I know my school provided some minor scholarships for students who are only going to that high school, so I was able to get one scholarship that was around a few $100s, but there are much bigger scholarships that can provide much more aid to students just on the basis of their academic merit, of their essay writing skills, things along those lines. So if we have some background culturally that we connect to or have some heritage with, then we can look for scholarships in that area. We can also look for different schools and try to apply for these schools based on some of the scholarships that they offer. I know that, for example, Ivy League schools do not tend to offer athletic scholarships or merit-based scholarships, although they do provide financial aid for students in most cases. So that is something that I would also take into consideration. Now, the sixth bonus application step that Ivy League admits take over the summer is to relax. So what I can say is that if we're watching this video and taking notes right now, then we're definitely ahead of the curve in terms of the college application cycle, as long as we take the action steps to follow through on these different pieces of advice. Even if we didn't ask our professors for letters of recommendation yet, it is still a great time and an early time to send those requests over through email if we haven't developed a good relationship with them. It's a great time to start making our college list and to write our common application, because if we have those done before school starts, we'll be smooth sailing for the actual college application process and the writing of the tons of those supplemental essays that a lot of these colleges now require. If you have any application questions or specific questions you'd like to ask me, reach out to me on Minnect, and be sure to like and subscribe for more Ivy League admissions content. Also, be sure to check out my video on 5 summer activities that impress Ivy League schools. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.